Alright, so now we're going to talk about touch events or on-press events. So like we discussed previously, we cannot use the event on click or on touch or on press. We need to use and bring and use the correct component. So for now, I'm just going to copy this and I'm going to paste it at the top. And this is just to, just to explain what we're going to use. I'm going to leave this pretty much empty right now. So you have several ways of adding buttons and actions, So if you go to the documentation, everything is in docs. You can go to search and search for handling touches. This is going to give you the documentation of what you can use to handle touches. So you have several ways. The most basic one is the button component. Don't worry, I'm just going to show you right now. I'm going to bring the button at the top. So I'm going to say button. And then, of course, we can use it just like we use the text and the view. I'm going to use button. Now, if I do something like this, let me just make it a self-closing tag. If I do something like this and run the simulation, we're going to get an error. So it's going to say the title prop of a button must be a string. So with each component, we get some specific properties. And some components, they will need this is a must, some properties in order to work. In case of the button, what we need is the title. Now, if I go back to the docs, right here, they give us an example and they give us a link to see, what this button is all about. And if I open a new tab and check it right here, they give you some examples, how this looks. And right here at the bottom of each component, you get the components right here. You get the props that you can use. Now, with each component, the properties are very specific. You cannot do whatever you want right here. And it kind of makes sense. For example, the button, it's a native button component for the device. So you can do an on press, to trigger an action. You can add the title, maybe change the color if it's disabled, and that's it. Notice that you cannot add custom stylings for this. This is just the default button you get with the device. So for example, right here it says the title. Okay, we can add a title. So the title is going to be, I don't know, title add 1 because we're going to do that. So I'm going to say add 1. Let me go back to the simulator. I'm going to reload it and we get the add 1. That's, really cool. And this is the default layout we get with this device. Now, if I go to Android and I reload it, we get a different type of button. Again, this is the native button. And you can only modify these properties, maybe the color, right? If it's disabled or enabled. That's it. You cannot do anything else. Everything, if you want to add a little bit, the stylings of what's happening right here, you can wrap it in a view, and that view will modify a little bit of what's happening, but that's the only thing you can do. Now, to trigger something, and this is the most important part of the button, is what you're going to do when you press it. So in this case, we will need to use the property on press. Let me make it a little bit better. So of course, this is just a function that you can run, and I'm just going to say alert, trigger. Okay, so I'm going to reload the application. Let me just, there we go. So I'm going to reload it, and if I click at 1, we get the alert trigger. So if you need just a basic button, this is the one you will need to use. Now, in real life, you're going to use some custom buttons because these ones are just, fugly. So you will not maybe just use a button. So you get other ways to, maybe create your own button with your own layout and trigger some actions. You get a different way of doing this, and it's not through button. Let's go back to the handling touches. If you scroll all the way to the bottom, you're going to get something that says touchables. So they give you 4 ways of for you to create maybe a view and to wrap it on a component that will listen for touch events. And it's the touchable highlight, the native feedback, the opacity, and without feedback. Now, all of these methods, they do pretty much the same, but they have small differences. Let's do first the touchable without feedback. That's the easy one. So I'm going to enter the docs of this one, the touchable without feedback, and notice all the props and the difference of the props. And, really different. So again, with bottom, we get the default bottom for the device. But with this one, what we do with the touchable and without feedback is that we can wrap whatever content we have inside, with the stylings and everything else, we can wrap it. And if we touch this component, since it's going to be wrapped with the touchable without feedback, this will trigger an on-press event. And that's why you get a lot more props, because this is a much more dynamic component. You can delay the press. You can, add maybe some callbacks to this. You can do a lot things more. You can still, of course, you cannot do the styles on this one. This is just a component that wraps something that has styles. So I'm going to comment this one at the top, and we can use it. This is one of the things you learn by example. I'm going to copy right here the touchable without feedback. It's a long text, and I'm going to bring that component at the top. All right. And I'm going to, instead of course, I'm still using the views, but I'm going to go here and bring the touchable without feedback. And I'm going to wrap my content with this. All right. So I'm going to go at the top and save it. Now, if I go to the simulator and I rerun it, this time we are not getting an error message. And it's because just to use the touchable without feedback, we don't need to pass any props. Because, again, we don't need a title. We are just wrapping this component. Now, of course, you get all of these props. You're going to check some of these props. For example, we, of course, get the same on press we got with the button. So if I do on press and, I don't know, press, and we say that we want to, of course, trigger a function or something like that, we can still use this. Let me just copy this one at the top. And of course, if we press it, there we go. And if we press it, we are getting the alert trigger. So that works. Now again, you get a lot of properties with this. You can do on long press, so on long and then press. And that one, what it's going to do is going to delay, or actually it's going to wait for a long press. So let me just comment this out. So if I reload the application and I, press it, nothing happens. Now if I press and hold, then it's going to trigger. And if then you get other properties, like, let me just copy this one and comment out. So you have instead of on long press, you have on press in. So press in. So this one, it's going to trigger as soon as you press it. As soon as you start pressing the button, it's going to trigger. And then you have the opposite of this. And this is actually pretty similar to what we get on web. So instead of press in, it's going to be press out. So if I start pressing the at number, nothing is going to happen. But as soon as I release the mouse, or in this case, the finger, then it's going to trigger. Really, really cool stuff. You get a lot of support for this. And this is actually all you need. So let me show you one more. I was not going to do it, but what the heck. I'm going to say delay and delay long press. I'm going to say equal and open and close. And I'm going to, pass a number, maybe 3 seconds. Now, this property, what it's going to do, of course, it's going to detect the long press and it's going to delay it for 3 seconds. So maybe what you want to do, you want to, for the user, to await maybe an amount of time before the function triggers. So if I save it and I do long press, it's going to delay it 3 seconds. Makes sense. So I'm going to long press, it's going to be delayed by 3 seconds, and then it's going to trigger. So of course, again, you get all these properties. You get the on blur, the on focus, and if you click right here, it's going to tell you what type of it is. It is a function. Whenever we go on focus, you can trigger a function, or a blur. Pretty much the standard thing we get for a web component. All right, okay. So of course, what we want to do right here is that whenever we click, or actually we press it, we want to fire a function that is going to go to app, and it's going to add a random number. That's what I want to achieve right here. We want to press it, press, and we want to show a random number right here at the bottom. So let's create that layout right now. So I'm going to go to the app.js, and I'm going to start doing this. I'm going to add first a state that calls random. And this random will get maybe an array with some, I don't know, random values. Doesn't matter. We're not going to use it right now. We're going to use it in a minute. So what I want to do is that every time we tap or we press the generator, I want to run a function that will increase or add a random number to this list. It's going to modify the state. Real simple stuff. If you're kind of confused in what I'm doing right here, it's because you need to learn a little bit more about React. So remember to go to the final section of the course where you get an additional optional section for just React for Web. So I'm going to say add random, and this is going to be just a function. And for now, I'm just going to say alert, add random, just to make sure that when we click it, we are firing this function. So then I'm going to go to generator, and I'm going to pass a prop to this component. So every time we click it, we actually press it, we're going to do something. So on add random, we're going to say that we want to run this on add random, which is a reference to this function we have right here. All right, simple stuff. Now on the child component, which is the generator, we need to tell the application that we want to do something with that prop. So I'm going to go and comment this out. Of course, we need to listen for props, and then when we click it, when we do on press, let me bring the on press, we want to delete this and say we want to trigger the props and trigger that add function. Now if I save it and I tap it, of course we are getting the add random. This is pretty standard React, not related to React Native. Now what I want to do, I want to show a list of numbers. When the application loads, it's going to pick the random values we have right here, and we're going to create one text, one view with the random number inside, one for each. So for this one, we need a different component. We're going to create it right now, and then in the next section, we're going to finish this. I'm going to create a new file called, I don't know, man, list item.js. All right, so list item. So on this one, we're just gonna render a stateless component. So I don't want to type all over again. I'm just gonna copy this one. Don't complain. In real life, you will do the same thing. You just copy from a different component. So const, I'm gonna call it list item. It's gonna be equal to something, and then we just do this. We will be using props, and we're gonna return some JSX, pretty standard. Now I'm going to do this. I'm going to say const styles, and again I'm just going to copy from the other one. All right, you should do the same thing. Again, not going to use this one, and I need to export the list item. So on the style sheet create, I will create a view right here. So I'm going to say I want to create a view, and actually, it's not closing because I made a mistake with this one. Sorry for this. Talking and doing this, not so simple. So, okay. I'm going to do view, and this view will have a style. So I'm just going to add the style right now, and we will create it in a minute. So this is going to be styles, and I'm going to call it list item. All right. And now inside, we will render the number of, that random number. So on this one, I'm just going to say text and maybe just a random number. Now I'm going to add this styles. So I'm going to say list item, and this one will get a background color of, I don't know, maybe kind of a grayish. So CE, CE, CE. We are still going to align the item. So align items, just like that. And then it's going to be center. All right, what else? We're going to add some padding 10. We can add the width, again, of 100%. I know this is boring, but we need to do it. And then I'm going to add a margin top because we will add many elements right here. So margin top, and maybe just 5. Okay. So of course we need to include this list item from within the parent component. We need to call it from there. So I'm going to go at the top, and I'm going to import the component, import list item from that / src and list item. Now, of course, on the we need to include it right here at the bottom. So I'm going to copy, and I'm going to show the random numbers maybe below this list item, open and close. Now, I'm going to say items equals, and then this, that state, that random. So you can imagine what's going to happen right here. This list item will receive a list of all the random numbers we have right here. In a minute, we're going to create a map right here so we can loop through that list and show one view for each, right? That's what we want to do. And then, of course, when we add a new number, I want to click on the button, trigger this function, modify the state, and that will get reflected on the list item. Let's add the map right now because we have some default numbers, default values, so we can actually map that content. All right, so I'm going to go at the top. I'm going to say, okay, props dot, we are passing items dot, and then we're going to map it. So on each iteration, we're going to return some JSX. Now on each iteration, we also get the item, and we're going to get the ID. And I'm going to chop this and put it inside here. All right, simple stuff. Again, basic React. So of course, when we do this, we need to pass a key. If not, React will give us an error message. We need to provide a key. So ID. All right, so this should work. If I reload the application, undefined, it's not an object. Props, items, that map. I made a mistake with this. So are we passing items? It's items. All right, gonna reload it. And of course, we get the random numbers, right? So we get the 20, we are getting a different number. So I'm gonna go here and say that we want the item. All right, so now we load it and we have 20 and 837. So let's go to the next section, and every time we add a number, we're gonna add a number to that state, and the changes will get reflected right here. Pretty